You're watching The Experience, Comic Culture and Sales, streaming live daily to Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter.
I don't have a hat. You're going to see why that's relevant here in a minute, but I don't have a hat. And my head has a complex now. Like, I can feel the back of my skull, like, turning red because I don't have a hat. It's bad. It's been a very long weekend for me. So, like, sitting down and reading comics and talking to these guys has been, like, the best thing that's happened to me in, like, 4 days. However, I don't have a hat. So I'm going to spend the next hour rewriting the lyrics to If I Had a Hammer to If I Had a Hat. This is in stores this week.
Oh my goodness.
See, I thought you could spend the hour singing Safety Dance.
We can dance if we want to. We can leave your friends behind. Because your friends don't dance, and if they don't dance, then they're probably friends of mine. I saw Men in Hats in concert once.
Those Men Without Hats.
Men Without Hats, Men in Hats, Men at Work.
Very different.
The Manly Men. The Men in Tights. Anyway, I saw Men Without Hats in concert once. They played the Safety Dance 3 times. It was awkward.
It's kind of like if you ever go see Gold Earring.
Yeah.
They play Twilight Zone. They play Radar Love. And then you're like, wait, you have other songs?
Correct.
I own Golden Earring's Greatest Hits.
Is it a single?
It's not. It's got like 11 songs on it. I knew 2.
Wow.
Oh, well, needless to say, I really need a hat. I feel really awkward.
You know the Boomtown Rats have a Greatest Hits album?
They do, but they have all the stuff Bob Geldof wrote. Like, so that counts.
Yeah, but the only song anybody knows from them is I Don't Like Mondays.
Right, but they also like have We Are the World. Like, I think it counts because Bob Geldof is the Boomtown Rats and Bob Geldof wrote it.
That's not on there.
That's weird.
Oh.
Yeah, there's some bands with the greatest. Now, if I ever had a band, my first album would be the Greatest Hits. Because at that point, it would be. My second album would be more of the best of.
I will say this. Green Day did that.
Goodness.
They did a record, International Super Hits, that came out like before American Idiot. That was an interesting concept. That wasn't a greatest hits record. It was just a record they called International Super Hits.
Mm-hmm.
I think that was them. But anyway.
Yeah, I would definitely go with the Greatest Hits just because at that point they are.
That's smart.
I mean, I think I would call my band the Hit Makers. Anyway. So this is In Stores This Week, where we talk about books that are in stores this week and not just about whether or not the men with or without hats sang the Safety Dance an appropriate number of times live in concert. The answer, it was an obscene amount, and no.
Oh, goodness.
So, should we get started?
Yeah.
Dan looks nonplussed here.
I'm feeling antisocial today. So.
I feel antisocial every day. That's why I work by myself in a windowless room.
I thought that's because of the restraining order.
Well, I mean, 2 birds, 1 stone.
Yes.
All right. So we'll get started with Highball number 2 from Ahoy Comics. And after having read Highball number 1, why they made a number 2, I think is just out of vanity. This is arguably the worst comic I have ever read in my entire adult life. Well, at least that are called Highball. No, it was very funny, but I just was not in the mood.
This has a real stern feel to it from heavy metal. Not as great as Bernie Wrightson's work and stuff like that, but it's kind of treading on the same ground. You have a character who can only seem to really function well when he's drinking, which is one of 2 times we see that in this week's books.
It's true.
It seems an odd trend. But yeah, this one wasn't as good as the first issue. The first issue I actually thought had some potential, seemed like it was going somewhere. This one just kind of felt like, eh. So, yeah, like the first one.
Wow. I'm actually the opposite. This book was a book that I wasn't too fond of the first one, and I actually like this one more. It actually made me laugh a few times. It's definitely not one of my favorites this week, but for me personally, I thought it was a big step up from the first issue. Ahoy books are usually pretty hit or miss. I think the first thing I actually ever read from them was Second Son or Second Coming. And I thought that was really good. And I thought, all the books are going to be like that. But this one was still, it wasn't a miss. Like it wasn't a bullseye. It's at least on the board for me now.
Well, let's keep in mind, Second Coming really is not representative of Ahoy books, as that book was supposed to be somewhere else. And then
that's right.
Fear of cancel culture moved it to Ahoy books. But we have had books like Guilt, and there have been several others that we've read from them that have been very good, that we've quite liked. A couple of the Dragonfly books, some of those things, I think it's more of a, for me at least with Ahoy, it's am I in the mood to have to put up with this? Right? Like if I'm in the mood for a goofy comic, Ahoy is good. If I'm not in the mood, then it's like, what are we even doing here? And today, Highball might have hit me different than it would have hit me next week or tomorrow. Just wasn't for me today. Shout out, what's up, Cool Gamer? It's good to see you. Everybody else out there in TV land. We're going to move on to Beatrix Rose Vigilante. And I'm going to go first because I think I did a pretty good job of trashing this book on issue 3. Issue 4, I liked. I'm glad we kept reading it. It did some of the things I wish they had done in issue 3, like move the plot forward and do a thing, have some action. This one had a lot of that. And I really quite enjoyed this one as opposed to the third issue. So I'm super glad we kept reading it.
I like the third issue. I'm kind of lost on this one. There's this parental thing going on suddenly, this mentor mommy thing, and it's not clicking for me. Where I really liked the third issue, I thought, okay, now I see where they're going. They're doing something different here. It was like, really? All right. Whatever. Just, it got kind of naggy. The way she's interacting with the other vigilante. And it's like, I don't know if I'm up for that,
This is actually another series that I've been pretty down on since we started it. Like I didn't hate it, but it just, I don't know. It was just weird to me. But I have to say that I like this issue too, and I think it's actually the best of the series so far. I could have done though without the story kind of the past story kind of going with the story we were reading in the red dialogue boxes, because it kind of took me out of it. And there's another book on the list that did something similar, but I think they did it the correct way, and I'll talk about it when we get to that one. But I don't know why this particular issue clicked with me, but it did. Could this have been just a Jennifer Blood story? Probably, but this was the first issue where it didn't feel like that. Like the other issues kind of felt like, after reading Jennifer Blood, they kind of felt like that. This one kind of started feeling like its own story, if that makes any sense at all.
Yeah. I think I called issue 3 Wish.com Jennifer Blood. This one feels like it's coming into its own thing, which I think is kind of what it needed. Anything else?
I guess just fourth issue's the charm for me on this one. I dug it.
And I guess I'm going to be the grumpy old man today. All right.
It's
don't
your
worry,
turn.
because this is next, and I read 2.5 pages and went, nope. That's my review on this. I read
Jay's gonna be
2.5
the positive
pages.
one. I'll be the positive one.
Yeah, this is another one that's like, there was a lot of dialogue that was completely unnecessary. You know, it felt like, you know, maybe they're paying the guy by the word, because it didn't really help the story that much. I mean, I don't know. I'm not sure what they're trying to get to with this book, but I just found myself going, okay, can we move along? Can we get something actually happening a little faster? Okay, now we have all these girls in schoolgirl outfits with ninja masks on. Is that the purpose of the series? I'm the grumpy old man tonight. So, Jay, be positive.
Let me be the positive one. I remember kind of liking the first issue, and no surprise, I like this one too. Like, it wasn't the best story, trust me, by far, that we read out of this bunch, but I do find myself, though, losing track of who's who, and especially when they put those outfits on. I can't tell characters apart. There was a character, I think her name was like Disha or something. You see her for a panel, and then I never see her again.
That wasn't what's supposed to happen.
I thought it's a cool concept. It's kind of like I don't want to say Hunger Games, but just like a kill or be killed to find out who's going to get these contracts or whatever they were. I thought the art was pretty good, and I think it's a pretty good story so far. You can already tell there's going to be a lot of literal and figurative backstabbing, and I don't know, something about it. It's a Dynamite book, and I don't usually like too many of them, but this one I do.
It just felt like, to me, from the pages of Jennifer Blood come the thing you don't really care about from Jennifer Blood in a fan service book. Why?
By the way, remember to hit the like and subscribe buttons while you're here.
Right. Now, I will say this. We had 3 Dynamite books this week, and this was the worst. I thought from here on out, like, every book we had was solid, including both Dynamite books, and I didn't think they would be. So, we'll come back around to those in a minute, but because we had kind of a light week, Dan and Jay and I have been reading other things. We always read other things, but we thought we would talk to you a little bit about the other things we are reading. So, for instance, Dan likes to read books like a person, and it doesn't even have pictures. I looked.
Yeah. No, I actually I like to listen to books. I don't have a lot of time. So while I'm doing other things like crocheting and painting and different things like that, I listen. And I am a huge fan of the Dresden Files. When I wrote my first novel, the Deadly Creatures, the Lucius Fogg novel, one of my readers said, "Oh, you're doing urban fantasy." I'm like, "What the hell is urban fantasy?" They introduced me to the Dresden Files, which I fell in love with, and I've read all 20 some odd books in the series now. Well, this is not the author of the Dresden Files. That's Jim Butcher. This is James J. Butcher, the son of Jim Butcher, who is putting out his first novel. It dropped today. I pre-ordered it, so it showed up on my Audible account this morning, and I will be listening to it starting tonight. But I wanted to bring people's attention to it because it's a brand new series and just give you guys the synopsis for it. It's called Dead Man's Hands. It says, on the streets of Boston, the world is divided into the ordinary, usuals, and the paranormal, unorthodox. And in the Department of Unorthodox Affairs, the auditors are the magical elite, government-sanctioned witches with spells at their command and all the power and prestige that come with it. Grimshaw Grimsby is not one of those witches.
Good name.
After flunking out of auditor training program and being dismissed as not department material, Grimsby tries to resign himself to a life as a mediocre witch. But he can't help hoping he'll somehow, some way, get another chance to prove his skill. That opportunity comes with a price when his former mentor, aka the most dangerous witch alive, is murdered down the street from where he works. And Grimsby is the auditor's number one suspect. Proving his innocence will require more than a little legwork, and after forming a strange alliance with a retired legend known as the Huntsman and a mysterious being from elsewhere, Grimsby is abruptly thrown into a life of adventure, whether he wants it or not. Now all he has to do is find the real killer, avoid the auditors on his trail, and most importantly, stay alive. So, like I said, this book just dropped today. It's on Amazon. It's on all the bookshelves. It's on Audible. And I'm going to start it tonight. But Jim Butcher, author of the Dresden Files, said that his son is outdoing him as an author. Now, I realize that you talk up your kids. But for Jim to put himself out like that, saying that his son's book is that good, makes me want to read it. So you might want to check this out if you're a fan of the Dresden Files, the Iron Druid, Verus, Rivers of London, or any of the other urban fantasy novels that are out there. Check out Dead Man's Hand by James J. Butcher.
Nice. That sounds awesome.
Yeah, it's a really good synopsis.
All right. Yeah, I like it. Ironically, Dan and I are going to talk about audiobooks today. Okay, Jay.
Yeah. Okay, so this is actually an ash can that I got with my Pocus Hocus Chapter 4 trade paperback and issue. The title says it all, folks. What you see is what you get. It's a grandma with a chainsaw. Her name is Hazel. The story is about these 4 friends that are on a trip. It's the typical, they stop at a gas station because they're lost and need directions. Basically a harbinger points them in the direction. They start driving down this country road, and one of them notices that the forest behind them is closing. Nobody believes her, naturally, just like every tropey horror movie. They end up blowing out a tire, and they slam their brakes. Right in front of them is Hazel's house, and she invites them into dinner. And Sue's, it's very dark humor, slasher horror. The Kickstarter for this is going on right now. It's got 9 days left. bit.ly/grandma chainsaw. Check it out. They have this awesome build your own tier system. This book, before they even had the ash can done, Source Point Press was like, yeah, we want it. And the ash can itself shows you Hazel, but it stops right when they pull up to the house. And I've been able to read just a little bit more because I'm friends with the creative team. This book is going to be killer. We've already backed it. If if you can't back the Kickstarter or share it out or anything, it's going to be a source point book. There's no date on when it's going to be released, but this is what I read because I love this team and this story is bonkers.
Your choice makes me think of my own grandmother. Not that she carried a chainsaw, but my grandmother had two sayings she would say all the time. One would be, well, it's better than being slapped in the belly by a wet fish, which always made me think of Monty Python. And then the other thing she would say is, it's better than being poked in the eye with a sharp stick. And for years I would hear that and go, well, yeah. And then finally as an adult, I turned to her after she said that. I went, where the hell did you grow up that you're poking people's eyes out with sticks? How is that an option? Yeah. And where's the range between slapped in the belly by a wet fish and freaking permanent eye injury?
Yeah.
But yeah, you made me think of that with Grandma with the chainsaw.
Yeah, this is actually Alan paying tribute to his great grandmother Hazel, because he said no, she wasn't a serial killer, but she sure was a badass. So,
Jessica Fletcher.
My great grandmother had a favorite saying, and she actually had it tattooed on her late in life. In her 70s, she got her first tattoo, and her first tattoo was, well, they can just go to hell. And she had it tattooed on her in her 70s, and I wasn't allowed to swear, but she taught me how to say that from a very young age.
Where on her did you?
On her arm.
Okay.
But like, my grandmother worked in bars her whole life and was, she was a tough woman. She just assumed beat the hell out of you as give you a Christmas present for no apparent reason. So like, it was this. Yeah, I saw this. I actually got my ash can through SourcePoint, and I saw this. I'm like, oh, okay, this is my grandmother. Alan has done a great job on this. All right. So my next.
Whoa! Tattooing a 70-year-old is got to be like trying to use a quill on on tracing paper.
No, she was pretty ripped.
Oh my God. Okay.
She became wheelchair bound in her 80s. Only after an accident put her there. Like she was walking and running well into her late 70s, going to the gym 3 days a week. When she was very young, she was a professional wrestler.
Jesus Christ.
Nice.
But this is back in the day when like it was a different kind of thing, so that was my great grandmother.
All right.
She also changed her name every 4 years to avoid the census man, because she hated, like, it's become very hard to do our family history because my great grandmother was a psychopath.
All right.
That's
yeah.
awesome.
Yeah. So I have no doubt that someday I'll find out that she was like a bank robber or some crap. Like, wouldn't shock me, and it'd be like, where's the money? We've been poor my whole life. All right. Next.
Surprise, Kyle. You're related to Jay.
Right? Or I'd be more likely that'd be related to a Hatfield or a McCoy, because it is that part of the country. Anyway. My books are much more well-known than Jay and Dan's.
Never heard of it.
Who's this
Gaiman
Gaiman guy?
Gaiman?
Right. No, so I drove between Wednesday and last night, I drove 1,000 miles. Round trip. Which is like 14 and a half hours for me. And so I needed some stuff to listen to. And Sandman Volume 3 just dropped on Audible. What was it? A week and a half ago, Dan, or so?
Yeah.
And I decided that before I started season or Volume 3 on Audible, I was going to re-listen to Volume 2 and read along, which I had done with Volume 1 just before the show came out. And so I decided to do it with Volume 2 and Volume 3. So I picked up, these are the covers, the new deluxe edition trade paperbacks. These are the direct market editions that DC put out. So I could listen to the book and read along. So as I was traveling, as I would listen for a couple hours, when I'd stop to, eat or whatever, I'd read a few pages, and kind of get caught up. And then at night I would read what I had listened to that day. So I managed to get through all of book 2 and start book 3 over the last 5-6 days. So this has been my outside reading. It's Sandman. Like I don't really need to put it over like Jay and Dan did their books because everybody knows what this is.
Yeah.
Can I do a quick breaking news? It seems that related to comics and Dynamite, they have announced that there is a new Barbarella movie in the works. Sony is moving forward with it. And they just announced that Sydney Sweeney from Euphoria and The White Lotus is attached to star.
Yes. Yes.
Jane Fonda or we riot. She doesn't have to be the main character, but she has to be in it.
Okay.
Can we all agree on that?
I think they could do a cameo or something. Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. She should be the Stan Lee of the Dynamite universe. Jane Fonda.
There you
Not
go.
Nick. Not anybody else. Jane Fonda.
Yeah. And by the way, for trivia fans out there, you do realize that Barbarella is the movie that gave birth to the name of the 80s band Duran Duran.
With such hits as Rio and Girls on Film.
Yes. Duran Duran, though in the movie it's Durand with a D at the end of each one. Durand. They dropped the D and they took the name Duran Duran from it.
All right. Thank you for the breaking news, Dan. Everybody read Sandman. Maybe then they'll make more. All right. Back to the books that are in stores this week. We have James Bond 007 number 3. I have a question for everyone. When the tall man was talking to James Bond, did anyone else see Elliot Gould?
Oh, I could see that. I didn't see it at the time, but I could definitely see that.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah. It was just me, but I read it in the voice of the grandpa from Elliot Gould from Ocean's 11, or the grandfather from Gilmore Girls. What was his last name? Was Herman. I can't think of his first name.
Is that really where you go first for Elliot Gould?
What? Ocean's 11
movie?
Huh?
I think if you're thinking of Elliot Gould, my mind goes to the original Hawkeye and MASH. No, he wasn't Hawkeye. He was Trapper.
Right. He was Trapper and MASH. No, I just see him, right? But in that character, I see him as a later in life version, like him post Friends.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I thought this was very interesting. I actually did a survey on TikTok the other night asking what people thought was the most complete James Bond story. Like, if somebody said, all right, I'm going to give James Bond a shot. I've never watched one. What movie should I watch? Which one people would, and my choice would be Casino Royale, because to me, that's the most complete movie, and it's kind of the origin. Thunderball got a surprising lot of votes. Goldfinger got the most, and World Is Not Enough got some. To me, comic-wise, this is pretty solid, as in if you don't know James Bond and you want to jump in, and this is surprisingly solid. It's giving you a lot of the backstory without, and giving us a Bond that, is fun to follow, but it's not your typical Bond story. We get a lot of the background on MI6 and stuff, but we get a unique villain set here that you don't know who the villains are. You don't know what's going on. You give a mentor for James in a sense. And I was just really impressed by this series so far. We're 3 issues in, and I'm absolutely loving this James Bond series.
Jay?
View to a Kill just because of Duran Duran. For me, this continues to be one of the best books Dynamite puts out. Like, if I'm not a fan of anything else from Dynamite, this is the book that I'm a fan of. All 3 issues for me have been solid. I want to mention, because I talked about this in an earlier book. So this one shows a flashback during the main story, but it's done in such a way where it doesn't take you out of the story. Like the other one had the word bubbles and it's telling you stuff that she's talking about her daughter with. Well, this one is showing you past events, but telling the story presently, but there's no dialogue or anything else there to distract you. I really thought they nailed it with that. And also, is that dude really that tall, or is everybody just that short? Because Bond looked like a little kid standing next to him.
I think he's supposed to be that tall. That's why he's walking with a cane, and because when you're that tall, you think of Peter Mayhew in later in life.
Yeah,
he had surgery for his legs and stuff like that. So when you're 7'5", that type of height, there's certain health issues. And that's why he was in a wheelchair, or when he walked, he had to use a cane. So yeah, I think he's supposed to be 7'5" or something. I mean, a ridiculous height. Well, and I see that being 6'6". That's 7 something is ridiculous height.
Over 6 feet's a ridiculous height. I don't know, hear that. But
you're wrong.
Back to,
okay.
Yeah, I know. Going back to the book though, all I can say is if you like spies, if you like espionage, and if you're a James Bond fan, you should definitely pick this series up because it's awesome.
Yes. So I was down on issue 2 of this book. I liked issue 1. I thought issue 2 had taken a little bit of a tone change. And then issue 3 comes right back to where I wanted issue 1 to pick up from. Right? It felt like the same series. I understand now why. So I would like to revise my being down on issue 2 to be like, all right, I'm in. I understand the need for it. This was, to me, a great spy story. It's you present a story from the history of this character, James Bond. You present a story from his potential future, and you cast just enough doubt on who is right and who is wrong to put James Bond into a gray area, which is where James Bond lives best. Right? You're not entirely sure who the good guys are and who the bad guys are. It reminded me of that movie Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy.
Right.
Where you watch the whole movie and you're like, I'm not sure I'm supposed to like this guy who is my main character. Is he a good guy or not? And it takes you a few minutes to figure that out. So I really am enjoying the direction this book is taking. And yeah, it's Jay said it. It's James Bond continues to be the thing that Dynamite makes that I tune in for. There are obviously other things that I enjoy, but they are shepherding the franchise of James Bond incredibly well, and this is a great story to hand to somebody who, again, has no entry point for James Bond. This is a great entry point.
Yeah, and there's a contemporary feeling to it as well, with the whole idea of, well, this guy used to be our enemy, and now your government is trying to make him a friend.
Right.
And you see that nowadays in the news on different things,
Mm-hmm. Right. No, absolutely. It's true. It bothers me though that the bad guy's name is very similar to actual bad guys in actual life. It gets it almost feels a little too realistic.
Yeah.
Like you can't name him Batty von Badenstein or something. Like,
awesome.
You got to name it something that's like, wait, is that a real guy? So, all right. Next up, census number 2.
This one, I liked the first one. I think we all liked the first one. It was something unique, something different. To me, this one dips a bit. It's still good, but I don't know. It feels like it's now forcing itself into an ongoing series, or whatever the streak is. Where the first one had an impetus to it, an action to it, and we were getting the setup. It's like so many weird little things were popping up that it felt like we were in a second or third issue of a TV series that's going to go 22 episodes.
Can I tell you what it felt like to me, Dan, and see if it doesn't hit the same trigger for you?
What's that?
Men in Black 2.
A bit. Yeah.
Felt like you'd seen the concept in number 1. Number 2 is more of that same concept with somehow more talking animals.
Yes.
And, you're going to have to see, does it pull out for number 3?
Yeah. Yeah. And it lost me a little bit. There, like I said, there was a sense of urgency to the first one. And there's a hint at we're going to go back that direction. But I don't know. It just, again, talking cat, talking dog, leprechauns,
Genies.
Yeah, it's still fun, and it's still interesting. And this is probably going to be one of those that if you read in a trade would be awesome all the way through. But this just felt like a little bit of a letdown after how good the first issue was.
Jay?
Well, since keeping with my positivity, but I have a reason for it this time. Y'all read number 1 while I was on vacation.
It's true.
I didn't download it, so I didn't read it. So I don't have anything to base between the issues. That being said, I wish I had read the first issue because I really enjoyed this one. I thought it was just a fun story about a supernatural census taker. The leprechauns made me laugh just because Irish background.
Right. How many of you are named Seamus?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was the story to me was just simple, straight to the point. I wouldn't say I'm like a Mark Bernardin super fan, but I do watch Fat Man on Batman. I used to watch it a lot more than I do now, but I always enjoyed Mark on there. It's, I don't know. I hope we keep up with this one, and hopefully I go back, read the first one, and I still feel that way about this issue. But the dialogue was fun. I dug the art, and overall, I just had a good time reading it.
Jay, if you check the server, you'll find the first issue's now up there.
Ooh, thank you.
Yeah, I'm gonna download them both onto my hard drive too. Okay, so I really liked issue 1, and I quite liked issue 2. It did feel like it was a issue 1. It comes at you 50 miles an hour, and this is a little bit of a catch your breath issue to kind of understand more about how this world functions. Right, like there are talking dogs and cats who play chess and are genies. Spoilers. But like, I thought the jokes in this one landed really strong, except for the recurring joke that this guy's not very smart. There's a recurring joke that this guy's not very smart, and it's like, well, if you throw somebody into a world that's this wild, they're gonna look like an idiot too. That said, I thought the joke in the last panel, the last few pages, the joke at the end was just a chef's kiss of like, there's a reference earlier, you need to be specific, and then it pays off. And I really liked it. This is great. Now, this is digital first content, only available right now in Comixology. Be looking for this when it comes out in print from Dark Horse, because this is going to be a hit. Speaking of Dark Horse and Kevin Smith related people, this is Masquerade by Kevin Smith.
I'll go ahead and take this one first. So, on the opposite end, this was probably the weakest book of the bunch for me.
Did we read number 1 of this while you were on vacation too?
Maybe, because I don't remember the first one. Maybe there's a big chunk that I'm missing, but this was. It wasn't the worst thing I've read, but this being a Kevin Smith book, some of the dialogue in this just felt clunky and kind of forced. And it was kind of just like somebody took a bunch of different stories and blended them together and then just poured it out. Like the first character we meet, super annoying. I was annoyed reading her. I didn't care about the lieutenant at all when that whole thing happened with him. Uh, the one thing that kept me from disliking this completely, to be honest, is it felt like a soon to be rebooted Subvert Expectations Darkman when they were talking about the facial stuff. And also, I want to know. I want to know what the deal with the female version of the Wraith is, because, like I said, they're just popped in there. They're dressed up like somebody, and then they're back in their suit. Uh, I'd read another issue just if it could answer some of those questions.
Dan, do we have issue 1 of this still?
Probably. I don't get rid of anything.
I think we probably ought to get it to Jay.
All right. Let me get that.
Because I think this is Jay suffering from I don't remember issue 1 or didn't read issue 1 fatigue, because all of those things are answers to things that happened in issue 1. And I quite enjoy this book because it took the things that were interesting to me from issue 1 and continued them. The introduction of the cop seemed a little bit like let's throw a Law and Order vibe in there to me, which was maybe a little unnecessary, but of course it's going to happen. But other than that, I liked the different continuations of the threads from issue 1. It felt interesting, and when you see them all kind of tie together the way they do when you've read both issues, it's a very strong premise for this is Kevin Smith writing what will be a sci-fi action movie.
Okay, it's up on the server now too, issue 1.
Awesome.
I am a huge Green Arrow fan. Favorite DC character. Green Arrow Quiver is probably in my top 5 of DC graphic novels. If I'm hyping people, Hush is number 1. Quiver is up there with Longbow Hunters and stuff like that. That said, I feel like there's a confusion in this. There's just so many things being thrown out there. He's like throwing every frog against the wall and trying to find what's going to stick. It's just so much, and you get lost. Like the woman doing the show to capture creeps. I forgot all about the producer guy and how he got there until after he got hired. I went, oh yeah, I remember him now from issue 1. So it just feels like maybe they need to trim this down a bit, make it a little more linear, make it a little more straightforward, and cut out some of the superfluous stuff. At least it seems superfluous at this point. I mean, this is basically Darkman meets John Wick, but there's so many extra things on there that confuses it. Like the whole woman doing the show and those kind of things, that I think it's kind of cluttering up the story. So I think there's a good story here, but it's hard to get to it. And maybe again, once it's all done, it'll all click into place. But right now, it just feels very cluttered.
Definitely. Okay, so the next book, I couldn't decide if it was the best book this week or the second best book this week. So I put it in this position.
Okay.
Vampirella Mind Warp number 2.
Now, you didn't like the first issue.
I didn't like parts of the first issue. I liked the setup and I liked the conceit of the first issue. I thought the first issue was maybe a little poorly executed. This one deals with the things I had problems with in a very good way. Like, I think the writer, this is Philip Kennedy Johnson, right?
Yes.
I think he knew that people were going to have the problems I had, and so fixed them in issue 2. Like, answered those questions and kind of led you to a period of, okay, now we understand kind of the psychedelic Vampirella concept, this is why we're going there. This is who this woman from the first issue is. This is who this guy is and how he's going to traverse through it. And it really does set up a very interesting sort of continuation in that now you've got Vampirella, the weird guy from the first issue, and her boyfriend, all like kind of in a romp together in the past, trying to figure out why the future is happening. So to me, it's a real this was a real strong answer to a book that I thought maybe was a weak first issue. Just because it had some execution issues. But this issue makes the first issue stronger.
I love the fact that we're going back into basically the old Forrest Ackerman days with Adam Van Helsing and Pendragon, and going into the 60s of Vampirella, but doing so in this new way. That from that I took it. I liked it a lot. Though I do find it interesting that this isn't something that a time that Vampirella remembers, or maybe it's, her memory is gone, but she doesn't remember these events, and I find that very interesting. What she and Adam end up doing, I think, is kind of interesting, that if you jumped back into your body from 20 years ago or 30 years ago and saw an old girlfriend or boyfriend that you cared about a lot, you'd probably do it too. In a very strange place to do that, but overall, I thought it was a very good issue, and I'm really liking this series. I still think the artist, as at time, draws Vampirella not very attractive facially. He's got a thing with faces, and it throws me off every once in a while. But overall, I think it's a lot of fun. I think having the guy show up in Pendragon's body and not know anything about it is kind of fun. The whole line about, I don't feel very good. And he's, oh, that's because he's an alcoholic and you haven't had a drink all day. It's like, oh, really? Wow.
Yeah, it's got some Quantum Leap vibe, right?
Yeah. So I liked it a lot. Jay?
Okay. For me, this is probably another one of those because I didn't read the first issue things. By no means did I dislike this book. But there's a big part of me that wants to get with like a Vampirella super fan or something to give me a run, one of their favorite runs of Vampirella for me to read, because outside of the fact that she's been around forever, and I don't want to say I don't get the hype with her, but other than the one book that we read that I will let go, I'll let that one go. And from what I've read in, because she's in Sacred 6, I believe, I've yet to read a story myself that I would actually want to collect. And I want to like this character because she seems awesome, like an alien vampire. I just think that if a fan out there told me, here's something from Vampirella you should read that's a really good run, like a Christopher Priest, like an older Christopher Priest run of it or something.
Maybe you should try this one.
Oh, you did not, Dan.
Yep.
Vampirella, the Blood Dragon. Yeah, that's getting added to my Amazon
That's
card.
the novel, right?
Yep. That's the novel I wrote.
There's an audiobook of that one too, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I thought that's like, I think I have the audiobook of that.
Yeah. And I put the first Mind Warp issue up on the server too. So didn't realize that you skipped that whole week. So
yeah.
That was Jay was in North Carolina.
Yep. Celebrating his birthday.
Yeah. Getting old. Okay.
Yeah.
I've been excited for this book for weeks.
I want to go first.
Yeah.
I thoroughly enjoyed this book until the end.
Damn.
I was really liking this whole story about this small airport dealing with a blizzard and a plane being forced in. It reminds me of a true life story about during 9/11 when a plane got rerouted to this small town in
See the musical Come From Away.
Come From Away, yes. And so that's what I was thinking. I was like, oh, this is going to be cool. And I was really getting into it. I was enjoying the characters. I was enjoying the art. And I have a bunch of people on this book are actually friends of mine. I know the writer. I know the colorist. I know the letterer. I was really getting into it. And then the twist at the ending, I went, oh, it's one of those books.
Literally same. Literally same.
I was enjoying it so much. And then, oh, yeah, it's that.
I will say this. I wanted one more thing in this book. And that is either a reference to Tony Shalhoub from Wings.
Okay, that would have been funny.
Or Daryl and my other brother Daryl joke. Because that's how small town this airport feels, right?
Yeah.
Like, they don't have a protocol for if an emergency plane has to land in a blizzard and they're overrun by it. Like, well, you could get a blanket here, or you get one from Daryl or my other brother Daryl, or, you know, like, that's what it felt like. And then, yeah, at the end, it turns into the twist at the end is like, which I saw coming.
Yeah.
Like, it telegraphed the twist at the end. And it was a twist that I would have much rather seen this be an Agatha Christie where the bridge is out and nobody be going anywhere kind of story. There's a serial killer on the loose or something, instead of the twist ending we got.
Or a time travel thing, the fact the plane's been missing for 20 years.
Right. And, you know, like there's time travel and then it's a murder mystery kind of, like, there are so many opportunities with, in television, it's called a bottle episode or a bottle series, right? They're stuck in a place. People can't go anywhere. You can't introduce new things. It was the thing that Lost had going for it until they screwed it up with the tunnels. They had that opportunity here and they twisted it at the end. That being said, still my favorite book of the week. But that twist at the end, I think, was a mistake.
I agree with y'all up until that point. And it's not that I completely disagree with your point on it. I thought this was a good first issue. I was like, cool, people working in a small airport in a small town during a snowstorm. A plane lands, the crew and passengers have to stay the night in this tiny, cramped place. You know, they lose electricity. So I'm thinking, okay, it's going to be some kind of survival story like man versus nature. And then there's the twist, and I was like, oh, it's not man versus nature. It's man versus something else. Now, the last page for me was like the right kind of sting that makes me want to read the second issue. But had they left that out, I still would have enjoyed the story.
100. If you want to do, should we just spoil it?
Yeah.
It turns into a monster book. If they want to do a monster book, make it the Yeti.
Oh, Yeti would have been awesome.
Right?
Or Wendigo.
Yeah, or a Wendigo. Absolutely. Like something that is a snow creature. Right? That it's in its element here outside. And as long as you stay inside, you're fine. But the second you go outside, nah, man. Like, there are so many options other than what they chose that I think would have been stronger.
It's like Cronenberg. Liam was saying that.
I feel like the pitch for this was, what if we did Come From Away meets The Thing? And they should have stopped there.
Alive, but on a smaller budget.
Yeah. All right, and then this book is last on our slideshow, our presentation here, because we didn't get it until 6:00 tonight.
Yeah.
So it just had to be tacked onto the end. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 133, part of the Armageddon game series.
I'll go first on this one, unless Kyle wants to because it's his jam.
Go ahead, Jay.
All right. It was a good Turtles book, but it feels like we've read so many different issues that it's like we're getting right into some big action. It ends. Then we start another issue, and instead of picking up where that action is, we start the whole process over again. Like this issue near the end was the end of the issue, the Armageddon. Was it the Armageddon game?
Well, you remember Armageddon game and This is Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles main title. That's the Armageddon game miniseries. It's just like so they're telling concurrent stories as opposed to
like I said when we read the book last week. I think for me, what's going to make me enjoy this more is just having everything together.
Yep. And I don't know that we're going to get that, and it's going to piss me off.
Yeah. I mean, it's good, but I'm just ready for it to when it ends on some action. There's action in the next book.
Yeah, this felt a lot like spinning wheels. It's like Armageddon game's going. Okay, we're going. Oh, we got another book due over here. Well, we'll just do more setup.
Yep.
We're going to talk to a Triceratops for a while.
Triceraton.
Whatever.
Well, they're different, Dan.
See, this is what I didn't like about the previous Turtle stuff, and what I was liking about Armageddon game was it was focused, and we were just dealing with certain things, and then we get back to we got the big mutant town, and we got all this other stuff going on, and it's like, no, I want to walk away. I just don't want that. I want this main story, and so I'm probably going to be in more on the miniseries and just reading this in case there's anything important.
And that's so I loved every second of this book, but I can explain why. I would recommend to Dan and Jay, who are not Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle diehards, tryhards, homers like I am, just read the miniseries. You're going to get everything you need over there. It's going to hit all your high points. It's going to make you happy. This is for the people who want to know how the sausage gets made. Right? The miniseries is going to tell the main story of the Turtles. This is the story of all the other side characters that so many people have trouble getting into and understanding because they haven't been reading 130 issues of backstory. Right? And this is going to be what they're doing while the four main guys are over here battling the Rat King. This is what's happening with these other people and how it's affecting them. And the stories come down like this, but yeah, it's not a necessary read. I don't think. I think, reading it to see if anything important happens is good, but that it's not necessarily required. That said, this book is a really good look at how the Turtles existing the way they exist in the area in which they exist bring balance to the Force, I guess. And when they have to go off now and do this thing and they're out of sight, out of mind to the other mutants, the rule of law and the rule of order that are provided by the Turtles go away. Right? Have a good night, Triple B. It's a whole thing. I think that when the Turtles are there, it's like when you can see your mother, or you can see your parents, you're not going to cause trouble because you're going to get in they'll punish you. But the second they're out of sight, you're causing all kinds of malarkey. It's that kind of thing for Mutant Town. They don't respect Jenica. They don't respect, some of these other characters. So you're going to see what happens and how the Rat King actually wins by causing division. So I think that's what's going to happen there. But I would encourage people, focus on the Armageddon game miniseries, if you're not actively reading all the turtle stuff.
Awesome.
So, all right. Well, that's all the books for tonight. And we managed to make it a whole hour on a lot lighter week than normal.
Mm-hmm.
So that's good. Head over to comicshoplocator.com. Type in the area code where you are, or the zip code where you are, and it will tell you where there are comic book stores nearby to you. I traveled this weekend to Baltimore, Maryland, and I was able to find out the zip code from the front desk at my hotel, and go to Comic Shop Locator and find comic book shops nearby to where I was staying. They were all closed because I didn't check with them on the hours, and many of them were closed Monday when I had time to visit them. What are you gonna do? But check that out. Jeff Wedding, thank you. Dan will be back tomorrow on the Dan Wickline Show talking about
She-Hulk and Daredevil and Rings of Power.
And then on Thursday,
we'll be talking about the latest Quantum Leap and Andor.
Can I get a ruling, Dan? Quantum Leap is getting better.
Yes.
Yeah.
And they just got picked up for a full season.
Oh, I like it. And at some point, Dan and I are going to have to talk about Legend of Vox Machina season 2 and already announced season 3.
Has 2 come out yet?
No.
Didn't think so.
So that's a whole thing Dan and I are going to have to break down.
Nice.
So maybe we'll add Jay to that conversation too, just to keep the Legend of Vox Machina vibe rolling.
Yeah.
All right, guys. For Dan and Jay, I've been Kyle. This has been In Stores This Week. Go to your comic shop and buy some stuff.
Yeah.